Díomh Acáirde, agus fáilte roimh go Páirc an Crocaigh. The words of Micheál O'Hare echo in my head all of my life, from our own kitchen at home listening to the matches on the radio, and the words, Díomh Acáirde agus fáilte roimh go Páirc an Crocaigh. So this is our spiritual home. It's so wonderful for us all to be here. And for an association like ours to devote its total attention to minding children is a real big landmark in our development. I want to thank you all for coming from so far and offering so much attention to the speakers. I was really delighted this morning with the tone that we have set. And again, here from Diarmuid Gormagat Ashin, it's lovely to see now an alignment coming in the GAA. We reckon there's about 3 or 4% of the people involved in child GAA sport here today. 3 or 4% you might say is not significant. But there's a figure you might remember from your mathematics, a figure called pi, 3.14. If 3.14% of an organisation get an idea, it's only a matter of time before the whole organisation falls in line with that. They call it the domino effect. So the 4% that you are here today are hugely significant. And I have absolute faith in you to go home and give the same message as you're getting here today to your own club people. I've met so many people on the corridors and said, oh God, I wish those 20 of the lads at home would be here today. Because the 20 at home are the people that are going to be with the juveniles, and you would want to help them to improve. The topic that I have today is developing competent and confident children. Following on from Paudie and Jody, and following on from Peter Casey and John Allen, and following on from the radio discussion here, we're all on the same team. This is the image I bring you before today, because the image that we're trying to put to you is that children would have acquired bilateral coordination by the age of 12. The Swan has a great affection in Irish people's hearts. I never once heard anybody saying anything, only the swan is a beautiful creature. What a beautiful bird. Would you look, a beautiful swan. Every time I hear the word swan, I hear the word beautiful. In all of my life, I only witnessed one court case in Ireland when somebody was brought before the courts for damaging a swan. No day has passed my life in the last 15 years before there was a court case bringing somebody to court because of the damage to the child. If we could get the affection we have for the swan and get it on to the children, if we could regard our children the same as we regard the swan, to connect to our own mythology in the story of the children of Lear, Fionnuala and Fiachra and Conda twins and A. That is the story that has connected Ireland with a sacredness towards swans. It's an awful tragedy that we don't have the same affection for our children. They seem to be there to be used and abused. And our job at this conference is to make sure that children's experience in Gaelic games is fantastic, that their experience is exhilarating, and at the finish of the childhood period, which is the end of primary school, that they are fully ready for the challenges that they meet when they go into the bigger urban secondary schools. The aim we have in the child section is that by the age of 12, all the children will be flying. By flying, we mean they have acquired bilateral coordination, able to kick with the right and the left at will and at ease, able to strike on the right and the left, able to play handball right and left, and able to play camogie and girls football on right and left. That is the benchmark of our success. And as Juliet says, if she spent 25 years thinking her left leg was for standing on until she met the master coach, Eamon Ryan, that tells us all a lesson. That shouldn't happen to children nowadays. And even though swans are birds or creatures of the air, they're in their element on the water and in the air, they still have to learn to fly. And if you live by a waterway, you'll be familiar with ferocious clattering and thumping late in spring or early summer when they're trying to get their feet under them. Now, the analogy is that children have from 4 to 12 to get their feet under them. We are their foster parents for those 8 years. And our only purpose is to get their feet under them, because if they get their feet under them, we needn't worry for the future. It's the children who don't get their feet under them that have to chuck it in the middle of secondary school. And those people here today that are doing transition years courses are hearing the same story every day. I played until I was 12, I played until I was 13, and then I had to give it up. So we want the child to be in their element, on the field and off the field. And the optimum learning environment that we can create, I'm going to outline for you now. The first thing is that the coach would be highly aware of the child's readiness in brain and body. The child's readiness means I set tasks that the child is ready for. If I'm too far ahead or too far behind, no learning takes place. If the child comes into a rich environment where there's lots of opportunity to play and practice and to match the body and brain development, they're well on their way. If at the same time the adults that live around them are giving them encouragement and information, we have created the optimum learning environment. Just as the swan's optimum learning environment was on the water. The swan is out of her depth on land. The swan would never learn to fly off the land. They're in their element in the water and in the air. Our children, we want them to be in their element on the field and off the field. The competence and the confidence that they bring from Gaelic games, enriching their whole lives. The human beings are very slow to develop as creatures. A little wild animal or bird are fully mature at the age of 1. God knows when a human being is fully mature. I still have a bit to go. So we're slow developers. But now with science and research, and thank God for last night, opening a whole new set of windows to us. The windows of opportunity that come to the child are these. From the ages of 4 to 12, the child is ready for fundamental movement skills. That is a very defined set of things that the child needs to know. Fundamental to me means something that you cannot do without. In the real world, that would be, we cannot do without food, we cannot do without water, we cannot do without oxygen. There's a whole lot of other things we'd like, but we could do without them. So the fundamentals are, now that we know them, are the things that children cannot do without. And I'm certain, after reading the Sports Council report all week, that the big drop-off at 15 and 16 is coming because that generation didn't get a good grounding in the fundamentals, the things that they cannot survive without. So the optimum learning time for fundamentals is 6 to 11, but the period that they're alive to that is 8 to 12. If I go to a school or a club and children are in 5th and 6th class and they haven't done the fundamentals, they're still able to take it. But ideally, it would be much better off if we started in the seniors and 1st class and children 7 to 8, their bodies and their minds are fully ready. An interesting window opens in children at around 7 years of age. This is the opportunity to develop speed in the human body. This is Michael Flatley's speed, not Usain Bolt speed. This is not speed over distance, it's footfall speed. How many times they can get their foot on the floor. How many short, quick steps they can take over a tiny distance. And that window is open and closed, and by 8 it's closed. And we can do nothing for speed in a child after 8, until again they're 13 in the secondary school. And then it's only about stride length. So these opportunities open and close. And for us who are the foster parents of all the children, this is crucial information. And if we let these opportunities pass, they don't come again. The opportunity for developing suppleness there is 7 to 10. And the key one that we all want to know about, when is the golden age for learning skills of hurling and football and camogie? Well, the golden age is from 8 to 12. This is when the mind and the body are fully right. They have developed sufficient body strength and sufficient movement from the fundamental movement skills. If the hurling now is the right size, and if the football is nice and soft, they will get full freedom of movement and they'll have a rapid acquisition of skills. If we rush them into that at 4 and 5, then we do untold damage to the mind and the body, and it's doubtful if anybody will ever recover that damage. By the age of 12, the range of motion and the style of motion is set for life. In other words, the range of motion in my shoulder and the range of motion in my hip is set by 12 years of age. This gives us fierce responsibility. That if the children aren't doing their fundamental movement skills, then they're caught with limited movement. The full range of shoulder motion and hip motion of people of my age is almost 100% because of the freedom that we had in living in the country and climbing and jumping and taking risks. And children now living in a very narrow scope. So in the hurling field, in the football field, we can develop these. We can develop on the classroom floor if we have a good link with the school. The style of motion, you see Jack McCaffrey running up Croke Park during the summer, or you see Tony Kelly. They were running that way at 11. Their style of motion hasn't changed. They're the same frame, the same shape, the same posture as they had then. The posture and the range is set by 12 years of age. Now, if we take that seriously, then winning becomes a very small, small part of our program. We have enough to do not to be thinking about winning. How do children learn to write? Well, the child picks up a crayon and they make doodles, they make marks on the page. When the teacher sees that the child is ready, they move into patterns. Those patterns eventually lead to letters, those letters lead to sentences, and this little child has written a lovely story. This is the child's first big match. I like to jump on the trampoline, and I like ravioli. So the child gets the message across. They've played their first game. You could say there's mistakes. You could say there's errors, but that would be to miss the whole point. This is the child's first big venture into writing her story. She has been telling her news for 4 or 5 years in school, and this is her venture. I can see loads of confidence in that story. The child is expressing their likes. So the two big things we want from the child, to express their likes. So she loves the trampoline. She's ready. She's on her own program of fundamental movement skills. And she loves ravioli. So she's fueling herself with good energy. She knows the story. The fact that she can't spell it, does that matter? Not at all. Children make mistakes in the games. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they love playing the game. That's what matters. That's the big connection there. Us coaches have the same process. The process that we go through is we have thoughts that lead to words, that lead to actions, that lead to habits, that lead to character, that ultimately lead to destiny. And I know every single person here wants a great destiny for their club. You want to see them on the big stage someday. I know that. You wouldn't have left home for nothing. But it's a slow process. So here's two coaches. Tony loves going to the field. He has the under-10s. He's mad about them. And he's talking to his wife before he goes to the field. He said, oh my God, they're so hungry. They're so eager. They're so keen to learn. No matter what I say, they'll do it. And he goes down to the fields and his words are positive. His words are friendly and kind because he loves being there. And his actions match his words. And his habits are good and positive. And he sets up a game immediately because he trusts the kids. And everybody in the parish says Tony is gifted with the little ones. And he has created a destiny for them because all of them will stay playing. Paddy, on the other hand, isn't happy with the little ones. He lives in a different place. And he's cranky before he goes down. Oh, none of them will listen to me. You couldn't get him into a Lena. You couldn't organise them. They won't do anything you say. They drive me mad. And he goes down to the field and he's full of crosswords. He's giving out before he gets there. And his actions match his words. They're punitive. He's always looking ways to punish people. Just get him out of there. He's known as a cranky character. And you know the destiny that he has for those children is, if he has any of them left by the end of the year, he'll be lucky. So thoughts, if you can take it there from Wayne Dyer, change your thoughts, change your destiny. That's a big message today. If I can get my thoughts happy around kids, I create my destiny. If my thoughts are cranky, if I don't believe in kids, then I've created a hell for them. These are the physical literacy. Most of you will be familiar with them. I'll just rush through it. Agility is the ability to move forward and backward, to move to my right and to my left. Imagine a centre-back out in Croke Park, moving forward to collect the ball, dropping back under the high ball without turning around, moving to his right to cover, moving to his left to cover. That's agility. It doesn't mean anything else. It's the ability to move forward and backward, to the right and to the left, with ease and confidence. Balance is best developed on trampolines, bouncing castles, cartwheels, in the swimming pool, turning over. Any time we can get the body rolled over. The little kid at home on the floor at 1 year of age, rolling and tumbling and falling is developing balance. Coordination is when all of the limbs combine. My left hand is doing one job, my right hand is doing another job, my left foot is doing one job, my right foot is doing another job, both controlled by the eyes and the brain. It's the combination of the whole lot. And as Juliet spoke there about her left foot, Juliet's left foot was fantastic at balancing her to allow her right foot to kick. The big transition she had to make under Eamon was when her right foot was asked to give her the stability, it didn't have any training in stabilizing her. And her left foot got the blame for being bad at kicking. It wasn't her left foot that was bad at kicking, it was her right foot was not able to create a stable platform. And that is where we let children down. So if we can create a stable platform, with right or left, the other leg will kick. Speed, we have done that already. The second family in physical literacy is running. The secret of running is, can the child get the hip to 90 degrees with the torso at will and at ease? If I walk into a school tomorrow morning, I can guarantee you that only 30% of the children are able to bring their hip to 90 degrees at will and at ease. But with 12 weeks training, they can all do it. So in 12 weeks of fundamental movement skills, we can give them a basic that stands to them forever. I watched a little YouTube video of Usain Bolt the other night just to get my mind right. In the 100-meter sprint, his knee came just beyond 90 at every single stride, left and right. Poetry in motion. So when we see Jack McCaffrey running, when we see Tomas O'Shea running, because they bring their knee to 90, it gives them fierce forward projection. And they're covering the ground very well, but they look brilliant as well. Jumping then, one-footed jumping, two-footed jumping, as we learned last night from the researchers, landing on the balls of the feet with the knees bent and the hips flexed means the child has experienced no pain. They'll jump higher then. If they experience pain, they won't jump higher. They'll jump higher. So the more we're knowledgeable about that, the child feels that. Throwing now is a really big thing. And I know in the GAA the rule is you can't throw the ball. Well, if you can't throw the ball, there would never be a hurley ball, slitter struck in Croke Park. The ball must be thrown up to be struck. So there is no rule in the GAA that you can't throw the ball. If you want to kick a ball, you've got to throw it up. So don't be telling things to children that are not 100% true. If children can get really good at throwing the ball, hand passing will become very easy and will come in its own time. I go around the country, I've been in 1,000 primary schools, and I've been in almost 1,000 clubs. And I see everywhere coaches advancing on to hand passing way too soon before the child's body and brain are ready. They cannot hand pass the ball until they're brilliant at throwing on their hand. And when they're brilliant at throwing on their hand, the hand passing will come so easy to them, they won't even remember the transition. But if we force 5- and 6-year-olds to hand pass a hard slitter or a hard football, we're almost closing the door on their faces. The word empathy that we saw so much this morning doesn't exist then, only on a word on a page. The next family is catching and passing and kicking. So catching for a child, I read recently that a ball engages the hand and the brain. I think it's a lovely sentence. The ball engages the hand and the brain. Now the first connection is maybe something softer than the ball, the beanbag, or something soft and something light. Whatever connects the brain to the hand, that's a good thing. And if that thing starts to move, the hand starts to move, the feet starts to move, the brain engages, we're in business, we have a game. If the child can't catch it, the movement doesn't happen. The anticipation doesn't happen. The things Mickey Whelan was talking about won't happen. Human beings grow slowly. There's a process in all this. If we take the steps slowly and carefully and methodically between 4 and 12, we'll have a lot of good players and they'll all stay and they'll all play for a lot longer. Kicking and striking, well, you're familiar with those. Now, if the club is serious, if you were here as a chairman or as a coaching officer or a person with a bigger view, you need to go home and start building your castle, building your destiny. And this is a guaranteed recipe that will work. There's not too many have tried it because I've been around and I know. Dig your foundation deep and strong. Get people who understand about the fundamental movement skills of agility, balance and coordination. That's the foundation stone. The next thing then, build your walls. Your walls are running and jumping and throwing. When the walls are up and the cement is dry, you can put on your roof. How many clubs have I been to where they're putting on the roof and they have no foundation and they have no walls? And they're all surprised that the roof fell in. And it falls in, and the 10 coaches doing what the 8 coach should have done, and the 12 coaches doing what the 10 coach should have done, and the 14 coaches done what the 12 coach should have done. But the house keeps crumbling in because it's pie in the sky. They're putting up the roof long before they put in the foundation and long before they built the walls. Games are the door to the child's heart. We can do more, once the fundamentals are established, then we can develop the fundamentals through games. The child needs a period of 6 or 8 weeks doing the fundamentals. But after that, the fundamentals must be developed through games. They have no purpose on their own in the long term, but we must give the child the confidence first. So the games are the door into the child's heart. Without light, we don't have a house. So the windows are the fun. They let in the light and create the energy and the child energy that they want. It's all about laughter, and it's all about fun and squeals of delight. And where do you come into it? Well, this is you. You're the heart. You're the heart. You're the person that warms this house up and turns it into a home. You attract people into this house. If you provide the heat and the warmth and the coziness, everybody in the parish will want to be in that place. Without the warmth, nobody will ever live in that house. Nobody will ever come into that house. It doesn't matter how good the roof is and how good the walls are. It'll be an inhospitable place. So your role is vital. Can you create the warmth, the energy, and the attractiveness to attract all the children in the parish into the GAA? So some of you saw this with Peter. What is it that makes games so attractive? What is it that makes games so intriguing? Fun from games arises out of mastery. To master the self, to master the conditions, to master the hurley, to master the football, to master the opponent, to master my own mind. To get away from school, to get away from home, and to play. The attraction of that in the children could not be over-explained. To get away with your friends and play must be heaven for children. To be allowed to play is our job. To design little games that they can play and challenges they can meet. First team to 3 goals, first team to 6 points, first team to 4 block downs. These are wonderful games for children because they're achievable. They'll achieve it in 6 or 7 minutes, then we have another game. Then we have another game. If you see children playing on their own, the games don't last that long. The game goes on a while, then they change the game, change the personnel, to make it even. Children have this sense of fairness. It arises out of comprehension. It's the body and the brain. That's the message I want to get out here. It's the body and the brain being ripe. The game ripens the brain, and the brain ripens the body. And when we get our combinations right and take a slow development, we have 8 years to develop the child into being left-footed and right-footed, right-handed and left-handed. These are the learning principles from the primary school PE curriculum, which is one of the best books ever written in the world. It's underused, but there's fantastic stuff in it. Children are active agents in their own learning. I've been reading maybe 6 or 8 psychologists who have spent their whole life in the last 10 years trying to tell people children are not blank slates. They're not pieces of putty to be molded. They're not sponges. They're active agents in their own learning. They're fully alive. They have a zest for living. They have a brain of their own. They have ears of their own. They're fully interested. They're madly inquisitive. They are not blank slates. They're not things to be done to. They're fully alive. If I want to make a cake of bread and I leave out the active agent in bread soda, I can't eat the bread. If I go down to the chemist and buy some tablets and they have no active agent, they're only placebos or a waste of time. The child is an active agent. I amn't, big God. The child and me are going to design games that we can play. Language is central. If you haven't come from a teaching background, you didn't get a chance to learn how to teach, well, you've got to learn a new language to teach children. If I, as a principal teacher in my school, walk into the infant room and they all start crying, I better change my ways or resign as a principal. My language didn't suit them. I had to get another language to talk to the 4-year-olds. Social and emotional things are important. Collaborative as against competitive. The whole world should be about collaborative. Look, I follow sports of all shapes. I watched Kilkenny for 10 years. I watched the New Zealand rugby team. I know about the Chicago Bulls. I know about Barcelona. And I've learned one thing in the last 5 years. These teams were not successful because they were competitive. That's a certainty now. They were successful because they were cooperative. Any Kilkenny player would pass the ball to any other player in the Kilkenny team in a better position. Any All Blacks player would pass the ball to another All Blacks player, regardless of where they were. The Chicago Bulls, every one of them millionaires, they became the best passers of ball in basketball in the history of basketball. Lionel Messi achieved 174 successful passes in one game for Barcelona. There are many of our inter-county players who wouldn't achieve that in a lifetime. And they told me that. They said, that's an outrageous figure. I met a person who played 10 years for the county. He said, I didn't achieve that in my whole career. So the successful teams are not successful because they're competitive. They're successful because they're cooperative. They play as a unit. They play as a group. If we have any interest and any understanding of what the GAA is about, we're about cooperation. We're led astray by false headlines very often. And when people tell you about competition, take a step back and see, is this competition or were they successful because they were cooperative? And if we can get that value system into our children, we'll be serving the children and their parents very well. So the brain and the human development are very slow. Around the age of 8, brain pruning takes place. We won't be asking you to do it. It does itself, thanks be to God. So when I was a young person, if my mother and father had sold out and I had gone living in France, then I would have learned French. If they had to move to Germany, I would have learned German without any problem. The brain decides at 8, any part of your brain that has not been used is not going to be used, and clips it out to have more reserve for all the other parts. So now you can see why the fundamental movement skills are so crucial. If we don't do it before that, it's very difficult. Here's a poem from Seamus Heaney. Seamus Heaney brought more people to poetry than any other writer in the English language. He made the ordinary universal. He wrote about digging spuds and cutting turf, and the whole world were amazed. But he also wrote about football. And this is his own poem about his own childhood. We marked the pitch, 4 jackets for 4 goalposts, that was all. And then we picked the teams and crossed the line, youngsters shouting their heads off in the field as the light died. It was quick and constant. Some limit had been passed. There was fleetness and furtherance, untiredness in a time that was extra, unforeseen and free. If you see some of the words that are in heavy print there, if I, the coach, could design a game for my children that was quick and constant, wouldn't I be some foster parent for those children? If I could create a game where there was fleetness and furtherance, wouldn't I be some friend to the children? That would be their winning. That would be their gold cups. Seamus Heaney, our great writer, from our own place, from Balahi in County Derry, writing about our sport and our culture. These are the aims a second-class teacher wrote, and I think it's very uplifting. By the end of the year, I want the children to be physically nimble, to show mental alacrity, have emotional security, and be enthusiastic for further learning. Wouldn't that be something noble to write on a page in the beginning of the year? That all my children would be physically nimble, would be mentally sharp, have emotional security, and be ready for more. Coaching for character. We'll just look at the yellow words there. Because it is better to be courageous and disciplined and fair and honest and humble and wise than not to be. Courageous means wholehearted. Core from the Latin word core for heart. Wholehearted and disciplined alone would be enough of a chain to hold us all. If I was wholehearted and disciplined, every child in my parish would want to be with me. because I'd be the only person in the parish who was wholehearted and disciplined. There's lots of people who are wholehearted, but they're not disciplined. There's lots of people who are disciplined, but they're not wholehearted. If I could be wholehearted and disciplined, every child in my parish would want to play. The child has a capacity to live in 7 areas: home, school, the GAA club. And Tony Humphreys is about this. He says, don't be worried what place the child comes from. They have enormous capacity. They're able to adjust to different rules in different places. So if the child comes to the GAA club, they have a capacity to learn the rules and the ambience of the GAA club. And if you're a good and kind coach, they will understand where you come from and they will behave for you perfectly well. I was with a young teacher in Kerry the other day, and she said, sir, excuse me, before we start, we don't have any bold children in this class. I said, what a noble woman. Imagine if every teacher and every coach in Ireland told their children, we don't have any bold children in this parish. What a lovely message. I think children are told they're bold, or boy children are told they're bold, about 10,000 times before the age of 3. And I think most of them then believe it and act it out. So imagine a teacher saying to me, we don't have any bold children in our class. Well, I met her after the class and I said, that is fantastic. I said, how did you learn that for one that's so young? What a beautiful thing to say to your class every day. So here's Barney. Barney is a quirky little young fella. You'd say he was a clean slate, wouldn't you? You'd say he didn't much pass through his brain, wouldn't you? Yeah? But look at Barney. Barney is 2 worlds, the quality world and the other world. And Barney will let 5 people or 6 people into his quality world. And you wouldn't think that Barney has much to go on for him, but listen to the standards that he has set if I want to get into his quality world. Keep your promises, call me by my name, acknowledge my efforts, be kind, be good-humoured, be respectful, be fair, stand up to bullies, teach me skills, give me a game, and accept my mistakes. He will let me into his quality world if I meet that standard. And we thought he wasn't there at all. We thought he was a bit of mortar or a lump of clay to do what we like with. All the children are fully alive. Their brain is fully alive. And only 6 people get into his quality world. Imagine if us coaches got into his quality world. He could be anything. Here's a great metaphor for coaching. This is a foster mother, following on from Paudie and Jody. Most of these chicks are not her own, but she has special gifts that attract others. She'll protect them from the heat during the day and from the cold in the night. God help any lion or anything that comes near her, because with those bony legs, she'll split them in 2. She's a perfect example of the great coach. She minds them, she gives them undivided attention. Here's the facts of it. 97% of Irish children are connected to their teacher or their coach up to the age of 7. That's a fact. They're still connected. Connected means belonging, deeply belonging. Disconnection happens when the child's needs are not met anymore. They're not getting the same stimulation as they used to get. They're not getting the proper attention that they need now. I'll just say 2 things on attention. Between 4 and 7, a child needs female attention 60-40. And from 7 to 12, they need male attention 60-40. Now that means a lot for clubs. The child of 4 to 7 needs female attention. Okay. Thich Nhat Hanh, some of you might have heard him as the great teacher, the great Vietnamese teacher. Attention, he says, is to be passionately present to the children. This foster mother ostrich is passionately present all day, 24 hours to her children. We have children for 1 hour or 1 hour and 10 minutes. Can we be passionately present? If we're passionately present to the children, then the learning happens at an enormous, rapid rate. This is the big daddy. Terrifying, you'd say, but very tender. When he picks up a seed, he grinds it down, and he feeds it to the chick in the way the chick wants it. So the big man comes to the field, finished hurling at 32 years of age, with his big man hurley and a big 5 O'Neill slitter, and he throws it in and wonder why nothing is happening. It's a big scandal that people would bring a big hurley to the field while they're telling the children to use a small hurley. They don't see the difference. Bringing a big football to a field when children are small is a great scandal. It's a great scandal and people are not aware enough of it. By the age of 3, children have had to learn to tell lies. This is one of the great tragedies of being a human. So Mammy was out and Daddy and the little lad were at home and they were playing. And Mammy has a few favourite things, a few favourite pieces of glass and pottery. And of course the game got on and the glass and the pottery were broken. And Daddy hid it away. And the next day at dinner, little Billy says, Mammy, Daddy broke your good vase. And what ensued then began to ring bells in Billy's head and he said, oh my God. So the next day anyway, Daddy was away and Mammy had her friends over and they were drinking wine and smoking. And Daddy doesn't like smoking in the house. So Billy says, and Daddy, Mammy was smoking. So within those 2 messages, Billy found out, you can't really tell the truth in this world. It doesn't do any good for you. So by the age of 3, he's telling lies. That means his own image of himself is tarnished. Every time we tell a lie, we damage our own self-image. Unfortunately, in the world, this is true. You can create a little oasis in the field where children can be themselves. John McGahern, our great writer, has this to say about children and their complexity. Though children are seldom fair, they have a passion for fairness. In their need for certainty in an uncertain world, they demand that all promises be kept. So the lesson here is, don't make promises you can keep, and keep the promises you make. If you want children to trust you, that's a simple answer. John McGahern, Seamus Heaney are great writers. They're better at words than any of us. Cooperative games. Only 20% of children can learn skills in competitive world. And that was true in the past. If 1 in 5 came through, everybody was happy. The Sports Council report is saying that. The figures from England of the previous 20 years are saying that. Only 1 in 5 is coming true. It's perfectly true. Only 1 in 5 can come true. The most children cannot learn in a competitive world. They need a cooperative world. If all of your children at home in the kitchen had to fight for their food, who would survive? Only 1 would survive. That would be a terrible tragedy, but that's the truth. 1 would survive and the rest would die of starvation. That's the way of it. Cooperative games are the philosophical and pedagogical pillars that makes games-based coaching a success. If myself and George O'Connor go into the ball alley with our hurleys and our ball, we'll play a cooperative game. We'll try and keep the ball in the air for 30 or 40 or 20. We'll play a cooperative game. The cooperative game is what allows us to develop the skill, and then we can play a competitive game. Cooperation comes from friendship, friendship comes from trust, and trust comes from kind-heartedness. Here's another metaphor from the world of nature. When Nelson Mandela got out of his prison in Robben Island, he went straight back into the wilderness to connect with nature that he had been cut off from so long. And when he had connected with nature again, he was ready for the political world. But he didn't meet the public until he had reconnected after being so long confined. So here's a duck that makes her nest way up in a tree, 40 foot up. It's a very good place for keeping the eggs safe and the young ones safe. But the day comes, the chicks are hatched, she's ready to go. So she's a master coach. She's now going to give her demonstration of how to jump out of a hole 40 foot up in a tree. So here she jumps. So little ones, I don't know, they're terrified or they're impressed. But anyway, she quacks and quacks the right way. And she says, now girl, time to go. So here's First Lady, away she goes, 40 foot. No wings, no flight. She trusts her mother. She has good reason to trust her mother, because her mother was busy for the last week making a pile of leaves so soft that the little one wouldn't harm herself. 5 minutes, they're all down. That's what trust does. It allows children to take the big risks. If the child trusts me, they will risk failure. They will risk missing the ball. If I want all my children to run faster, they've got to take risks. If I give out to the child who ran fastest for missing the ball, they'll all run slowly. Change my thoughts, change my destiny. Here's the face of a happy man, the most congruent man that lived in the world in our lifetime. A man that hadn't a care in the world. He gave his full attention to the children. He's a model for us coaches. Give your full attention to the children and they'll repay you 1,000 times. To be or not to be, that is the question. This conference is calling for you to be something different and something else. This is our calling. To be or not to be the coach that the conference is asking you to become. To take the risk, to go on the journey and be the coach the children need. And to hell with everybody. To be the coach that the children need is our calling. And Pat Daly over here will talk about that in his MVA. He will talk about that in more detail later. The safest place in the world to be. The crocodiles aren't famous for tenderness or kindness, but you see, sometimes we don't get it right. So this little croc was in a bit of danger, so he said, where will I go for cover? So he jumps into the daddy's mouth, and he looks out at the world and says, catch me now if you can, he says. So sometimes us coaches have to get teeth. We have to strip our teeth and tell people, back off, they're only 6. Back off, they're only 8. It's all ahead of them. We heard about the Gary Lineker story earlier. Some people are over-ambitious. They're way ahead of the children. They're going to ruin their lives. So it's our job, my job, is to protect the children. Competence and confidence. Now, we cannot give what we do not have. So here's a small story. Competence and confidence. Competent and confident children have a reservoir of resilience that enables them to cope with new challenges, failure, and setback. If we take our time, if we're careful and we meet the stages of brain and body development, then the child has a resilience that comes back when they fail. If you read that line again and replace the word children there with coaches, competent and confident coaches have a reservoir of resilience. When you go home from this conference, you'll be full of enthusiasm, full of life, and people are going to knock you sideways. You'll say, there were 700 people there with me, and we all believed in this new story. Here are the golden rules. You can look at them yourself. I'd be quite happy if you take one. One will do you for this year. Connect before you correct. Kindness is the key. Positive words makes competent. Kids, replace conflict with cooperation. Belonging is brilliant. Patience is powerful. Avoid criticism. It is crippling. Congruent coaches. Create confident, competent kids. So pick one. Let that be your New Year's resolution. And we have the final story. These little signets are mad to get off. If you all really blow really hard, I think they might get a lift off. You give them a good blow and see can they lift? Come on. Up they go. And away they fly. And by 12 years of age, all our children have acquired bilateral coordination. Go to Míle Magadh.